I forget. There we go. All right. Well, welcome to today's edition of the Art Marketing Podcast, an episode in which I am titling it "An Overnight Success Takes 10 Years." And I have none other than artist Megh Knappenberger with me. Megh, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
It gives me great pleasure to introduce you, Megh, because not only are you a talented artist, longtime customer, a dear friend at this point, but also a two-time podcast guest. I had to go back and look, by the
I
way.
know.
Do you know that was
I
February
feel pretty
20th?
special.
February 20th, 2018. That's
Whoa,
how long ago that
really?
was. Where in the world did that time go? All right, I want
No idea.
to throw some intro stuff in and then start teeing you up. But I would say at a macro, why
Great.
do you want to listen to this podcast? And why would you want to get to know Megh? And where would I start on that? And Megh is sort of a unicorn. It is a rare and mythological animal, which for artists, there's venture capital scene unicorn definition. For artists, it translates into an artist that is both talented in their craft and talented as a marketer. That is an extremely rare thing in the art and photography circles. And week in, week out, I run these webinars where I'm constantly talking to artists and photographers, and whether Megh knows it or not, I reference her story oftentimes, not by name, when I get these questions like, how many people do I need on my email list, or Instagram followers or Facebook fans to make X dollars per year? And artists love asking that question. What is the magical formula? If I just know what the magical formula is and I have it, then I will have this great business. And I would say, like, earlier in my career, I tried like hell to get to the bottom of that. Looking at all of our customers, all the data, what is the 6-figure a year artist formula? You have X website traffic times Y emails plus Z Instagram fans running so many sales per month equals magical 6-figure a year business. But what I've come to learn over the years is that there is no damn magical formula. There never has been. There never will be. There's no special number. There's no hack. There's no trick. There's no math. Every artist is different. Each takes a different path. What works for one may not work for the other. I think what matters more than any other formula or anything else is regular, consistent work on your marketing spread out over the course of years. Moreover, and especially in Megh's case, which we're going to get into, is constant iteration on your niche and subject material. But as an artist, and I'm sorry I'm going to do this to you, Megh, but as an artist out there looking to grow your business, and again, I apologize, because what do all artists do? They just follow other artists, and then you have an Instagram following of other artists. But artists, you would do well to follow Megh on Instagram. And by the way, this is an ambush question. Feel free if you don't want to answer it. Are you already over the $1 million mark in sales and net sale or gross sales?
You know what? I thought of that as I was pulling some numbers right before we talked, and I would need a minute to do that. I'm getting close.
Yeah, you're getting really, really close. I would say
Yeah.
if you're not there, just like, knowing you for as long as I have and watching the arc of your career as I've gotten to, if you're not there yet, you're very soon, you are on the path to be $1 million a year in revenue. And that's a really, really exciting thing. So I thought ahead of time, the themes that I want to tease out of this episode is, one, just how long it takes to become a successful artist. Two, the concept of pivoting. Three, the concept of newsjacking. Four, starting with demand and working backwards. Understanding that the artist is part of the brand. It can't be just the work. The customers want to know who you are, what makes you tick, what you're interested in, what you're all about. So I figured we would just sort of start the conversation and then have at it and see what shakes out. And I don't want to necessarily spend too much time doing the ancient history, Megh, but I love sort of like the career arc and like just that you've had already, and maybe teasing out some of the lessons along the way. And I wanted to start because I love this story. And the whole genesis for this episode was Megh has a huge win recently, which is an amazing story. And we're going to get to the amazing story. But do you know what I thought about where I wanted to start? What I love is your story of you in your art booth, on your feet all day, in the sun, $300 in profit, and you're like, WTF, what am I doing with my life? What's going on? Maybe start there.
Yeah, I mean, 300 is a way overestimate for that particular story. Yeah, I was at a booth, and I did $0 in sales that day, and then someone walked up and vomited right in front of my booth, like literally all of the ground in front of all of my beautiful work was just a pile of orange vomit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, I'm done. I am done both here and also with like these small, dumb shows where like people are just walking around kicking the tires. And it just, when I have little kids, like doing weekend shows for me just doesn't, it's a huge issue. So yeah, that was a real moment for me. Like, I am out of here. Goodbye.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with this. What am I doing? I'm never going to be an artist. Sorry, my kid came in. I have to hand him a phone. Go watch Lightning.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
And it was out of that. It was out of that scenario that and Megh's from Kansas City. She went to KU. Huge KU fan. Longtime KU fan. And it was out of that scenario that you went and figured out, okay, I'm going to do the mascots, and did your licensing deal and got that whole thing over the line.
Yeah, pretty much. That was all happening kind of simultaneously at that point. So it was just doing the numbers on, okay, here's how many hours it took me to prep for this show, and here's what I put into it, and all inventory that I had to produce, and then all the time and schlepping stuff like across a field. When I did the numbers, especially when I made $0 and had to pay for the booth, it was like, this, in no universe does this ever make sense for me unless I'm pulling down like 30 grand at each show. And like some shows I'm sure you can, but for me it was just like, this is not the way I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah. And if you go back and you listen to like a way earlier episode with Megh, she goes into depth and talks about her story about how she created these original works that were the mascots for KU, got an official licensing deal, and then got like, thrust onto the path of success, became a name, got written up in the news, and, really kickstarted her career off. So you can go back. We don't need to retell that story. But one thing I wanted to touch on, since that is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the work that you had in the booth originally, right, when you were doing that show, subsequent to you generating all the demand that you did with the Jayhawks, started selling, didn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And all that
work still.
Yeah. And I have her site pulled up here, and get my fat head out of the way. And some of the sunflower type of stuff and the bison type of stuff that you had in that booth where you were on your feet for 8 hours and only making $300, subsequently, after you were able to generate all that demand and all that attention, it started moving. And I think that's like a really, really interesting concept to even think about, because it wasn't that the work wasn't good back then. It was, you just hadn't built up enough of an audience, enough of a brand for it to sell.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, especially like even now, some of that work has been on my site since the very beginning, and it's old to me, but a new person, it's new to a new customer. So that's like such an important, I feel like that's a big important marketing lesson too, is that once you start to feel just like, when I feel so sick of hearing myself talk about something, it's like, that's at the point when like maybe people have maybe heard it, but probably not. So it's like getting past the point of like, I'm sick of it, therefore everyone else must be sick of it, is so wrong for artists. And with my work especially, it's that way. I haven't been as like, I haven't made as much new work in the past few years as I did like right at the beginning. So all of that beginning work has carried me over this pocket of time when I like had a kid and then a pandemic hit. Like, I didn't make a lot of new work during that time, but it didn't matter. I was able to market the stuff I already had.
Yeah, which is amazing. And your career is interesting too, in the sense that you're an artist that, at a macro, your niche is Kansas City gal, Kansas City themes, Midwest heartland, like, people from Southern California, maybe they're buying your work, but you own a niche, I would say. Do you feel like that's how people refer to you, as like the Kansas City artist, the Kansas City gal?
Yeah, it's funny, especially right now. I feel like I've hit this moment of peak Kansas City, especially with this, everything sort of tied in. It was this perfect storm right now, especially this summer, with KU winning a national championship and people knowing me as a KU artist. But then also there's this public arts project here called the Parade of Hearts. And it's like 150 of those big. It's kind of like the cow thing. and it's a big fundraiser here, and it is a huge thing in Kansas City right now. And they called and asked me to do like the final heart to celebrate the national championship. And this has turned into this like wonderful PR, like great thing for me that was totally unexpected. And that all came. And I think that's part of like how you developed the title for today, because we were talking about this, like that opportunity came and it seemed, it's kind of like right place, right time, but also like that reputation had been building over the course of the past 8-10 years that I've been in Kansas City. Like things like that happen with good relationships and good reputations in a city like this, where it's not necessarily a small city, but everybody knows one another.
Yeah.
It is Midwestern. And also I'm like, if just considering that right now and how to take what I've built here and then build another one of those, maybe somewhere else, or like something else, over the internet. So I am kind of at a pivot moment where I realize like I love being the Midwestern and the Kansas City and the KU artist, but also how do I scale my business? And there's a ceiling that I could and will hit with Kansas City and the Midwest. So I'm interested in going bigger than that. And yeah, it's an interesting moment to be considering how to maintain what got me here, but also build on it in a different way.
No, that's such an interesting conundrum right there. I mean, I could just as easily take a contrarian path and argue against you on that and say you could just keep raising your prices and just be known as the Kansas City gal and crush that, because the niche is big enough to sustain a massive business. But independent of that, I think one of the things that I've enjoyed, sort of as your career arc has gone by and the work that I've seen you produce and some of the things that you've worked on is, I don't know whether you do this instinctually, whether it's just baked into your DNA, or if you've sort of figured out intentionally to do this. And the concept is starting with demand and working backwards. Okay. So what most artists, most photographers out there do is they say, this is what I want to produce because I love it, because this is what creatively sustains me. It's what interests me. This is what I'm going to create. And then they create it. And then they go take that work to the market, and the sales don't map to their expectations. And then they either blame themselves, I suck, I'm not good enough, or they blame other conditions. People aren't buying art right now, we're in a recession, the stock market just crashed, whatever it is. And they quit. And what you were in that point of your career earlier in the booth for $300. And then with the Jayhawks, whether you did it instinctively or not, I'm very curious. My read of it is you're like, okay, there is just not the demand for what I've created right now. Instead of just going and creating something else, I'm going to go find some diehard, crazy, lunatic demand, work backwards, and then create something for them. Do you feel like the first time you did that intentionally, or do you feel like you got there serendipitously, or what?
Yeah, I would say it's instinctually, or if not instinctually, certainly on purpose. And it's a weird thing to talk about, because I have been also very intentional to choose things that I care very much about. So I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. And to talk about it as if I just went into the Jayhawks as a money grab is wrong. But also I did that very intentionally, looking at my career and saying, like, very top level, like, what are some things I can make once and sell a million times and be the engine that powers then runway to create other things, which then powers, it's all this sort of like, the business kind of like builds on itself over time. And I've tried to look forward to like, what do I actually want from this? What do I need from this? And the reality is that having a product line that helps to just kind of like power the business gives me the freedom to then think about like, well, what else do I want to do? And, I'm not hustling so hard to sell something that only makes sense to me. Then that's not to say that I don't make that work. I definitely do. And there's a ton of work I make just for me, just for my own mental health, that doesn't make it always into my social media or onto my shop. But I have to bring in an income in order to have the time and space and materials to do that work. So yeah. I'm just naturally, my personality is that I'm very practical. I really think about like, what are the numbers for this? What's like the business goal of this thing? Part of it is just growing up in an entrepreneurial family. Part of it is having a background in marketing design and, working more traditional jobs before this. And just, I used to have to track my time by the 15-minute increments when I was a graphic designer. And every 15 minutes of mine was billed out at a specific rate. And I watched how that changed as I changed careers. And that thinking has never really left me. So it's like, what am I spending my time on, and what can run automatically without me, so that time gets to get put into exactly what I want to do, like whatever that is on a certain day.
Wow. It's interesting to hear you say that, especially the 15-minute billing increments, which is like what lawyers have to do, right? Because they're constantly just billing for 15 minutes. The start with demand and work backwards is just so damn impressive and so damn powerful, and such like an incredible concept. And then I think you've also done a great job learning that lesson, whether it was instinctually and you got better at it over time after the Jayhawks hit. But there's that portion of it, and then a lot of what you've done recently is the newsjacking portion of it, and the two of them sort of build on each other, don't they? The newsjacking. Do you want to define newsjacking? I'm actually curious to hear you define newsjacking. You know how I define it.
Sure. I would say newsjacking is, in general, just sort of following what's going on in the world, and then watching a tidal wave build and capitalizing on a moment in time when everybody's going to be talking about something, and making a thing about that thing.
Yes.
And kind of riding the wave of like the hashtag wave, the share wave, the virality wave. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So, I mean, and again, I think newsjacking can be like a hustle, or it can be something that really like contributes to my personal brand. And so I have used it as a way to contribute to my brand. And it's funny because it started during the pandemic, and I was in this like shitbox little studio just to get out of my house, but it was so small that I couldn't do my normal painting. But I was just like, I got to be somewhere, and I got to be creative, and I got to figure out a way to make some work to just like save myself from this like crazy time. And so I started doing these little portraits, like little watercolor portraits, like in the amount of space that is between my shoulders, because that's all I had. And that led to, and I would just kind of go in without a plan because it was a planless time. So I think the first one I did was when RBG passed, and that was a very sudden thing. I don't think that was one that a tidal wave could be ridden up to. And she was someone who, again, this is somebody that I care deeply about. This is a person I admire. This is something that follows kind of along with my brand. And so I painted her portrait as a way of just like celebrating her life, mourning her legacy. And I created a donation component of the limited edition print that I give back a portion of that to the ACLU, which is near and dear to her heart. So there's also this kind of, especially, and this is not everybody does this, but for me, celebrating the life of somebody I admired feels too grabby if I'm not also giving back to their legacy. So it's a great part of it to talk about, like, I'm celebrating this person and also giving money back. So I'm getting to write checks to the ACLU and to a few other things every year that is great. I love doing that.
I love
the way circuitous way.
I love the way that you categorize it, because one of the things that I'll often get, and it most recently happened with Ukraine, and then before that, it was heavy on the whole BLM scenario, right? And everyone was asking me like, "Hey, I want to do this Ukraine fundraiser art. What do you think about this fundraiser art? Should I do Ukraine fundraiser art?" Or, "Hey, I'm really interested in this BLM thing, and I want to do the BLM thing." And I'm like, I'm having a conversation with him, and I was like, "Do you really bleed BLM? Do you really bleed Ukraine?" Right? Like, regardless if they're like, if it's, how you feel about the movement or whatever it is, or whether it's a nice gesture, is that really you? Is that really what you love? And so I agree with you that having the authenticity in the newsjacking, and having the authenticity in like, this is you, like, you love that woman, you love what she stood for, you love what she achieved, the glass ceiling, all the rest of it. So that is totally worthwhile. And I think, people can smell it when it's not.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, newsjacking is like anything, it's all, tethered from my brand. It's not like this thing that's like out there in the world that becomes its own little freestanding project. Like, it all ties to me and it has to make sense. And there's enough news to jack all day,
All day,
every
every day.
day for the rest of eternity,
Yes.
no matter what you're into. So it's like whatever news and, things that you like to follow, uh, there are things to, from which to jack there.
Yes,
So,
for certain, for
yeah.
certain. But even in there's a formula there, and it really is the combination of
Hmm.
both. Like, when we say start
Hmm.
with demand and work backwards, Megh did the Jayhawks. Then Megh loved Ruth Bader Ginsburg and did Ruth. A little while later, she did, and I'll show that in a second, the Anthony Bourdain. And
Hmm.
that these people have diehard fans, that these people love them. So you're
Hmm.
starting with demand. When you create a product that is really compelling, there's going to be a built-in audience that's massive, right? There's that already. So you're starting with demand and working backwards. And then the time in which you created the works, right when RBG died, right when Anthony
Hmm.
Bourdain died, and the whole world was talking about it,
Hmm.
which is just an amazing concept. And I wonder the
Hmm.
success you've had, selling those and the attention that it's brought you. And I want to pull up the Anthony Bourdain one too. I think the Anthony
Hmm.
Bourdain one that you did is my favorite, of your works. But I also just love that
And that
dude.
was actually, I know the Bourdain one was actually on the 1 year, like leading up to the 1 year anniversary of his death. So the reason I
Mhm,
painted it, for one, this was like another like tether to me thing. I had always
mhm.
wanted to paint Tony Bourdain, especially after there was an episode where an artist did his portrait, and I was like, God, I want that to be me. So it's like a thing that was living in my brain. And then I saw a trailer for the movie that they made about him, and when that movie came out right around the anniversary of his death, and it was all sort of like there was a big thing kind of brewing around the 1 year anniversary of his death, as well as the announcement of the scholarship in his name. And so it just
Mhm.
felt like the timing all worked. And it was like, so I wanted to have that piece done. And I announced it the day the movie premiered. So that one I
Wow.
did, I was able to ride and sort of see the wave growing,
Mhm.
and pick a date that wasn't that far in the future, but it gave me a little time to like develop a little bit of marketing and, like do make a time lapse video of all this stuff. So um, yeah, so it doesn't. Sometimes sometimes it's a thing that happens and you make a thing right away and you just put it out there and hope for the best. And
Mhm.
sometimes there are things that you can watch building, and I think both are great.
Do you have plans to do this again in the future based on the success you've had thus far?
Yeah, and I'm trying now, like I've done it a little bit willy-nilly on just like things. And it's funny, I was just having a conversation about this like little Ted Lasso painting I did over the
Mhm.
holidays last year.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do more in the future and right now is just like put some parameters around it, like a little bit tighter. The things that I've done so far have fallen roughly into a portraits category, but aside from that, they're kind of their own little standalones. Like I did a Dave Grohl painting, and after I read, he was in the news a bunch, and like, so I've done some like musical, and so right now what I'm trying to do is like, okay, I'm seeing how these things are working on their own, but how do I do it where like I have a little family of stuff, and then when I do one, it brings attention to the rest of the family, so it's like its own little, growing, mutating organism together. So I don't know yet. I'm kind of in the thinking mode on
No
that.
thinking. Yeah. The wait and
Yeah.
see mode. Well, I want
Yeah.
to get to your recent big hit, but before we do, I think, as I'm listening to you talk, right, and I'm the marketing guy, right? To the hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Listen.
Yep, no worries.
Yeah.
But I'm actually enjoying the fact that, like, this is kind of nice. Like, we're we're not talking about the hardcore marketing stuff. We're talking about the other. So I think one of the other things that you do really well, because I want this to be beneficial for other artists, is balance Megh's art and who Megh is as a person, especially as it pertains to social media. I think you do a very good job of breaking up, not just the work all the time, but you, the kids, the family, what you're doing, how you're running around. I'd love to think about how you approach that, sort of what your thought process is on how Instagram's going. And, again, everyone, what's the magical alchemy? You guys have heard the financial figures. Megh has 12,000 followers on Instagram. It's not about the number of followers. It's about the connection. And I think you're very good at building a very strong connection. You're constantly consistent on it. You're always posting, which is really, really important, and updating. And you're doing that whilst being a mother, which is not easy. So I would love to get your practical advice, thoughts, alchemy, just however you approach it, and keep it up consistently too, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say like it's constantly changing, and constantly I'm learning and trying things and then pivoting around and just seeing what works. And it took me a little while to, I mean, like if you went back through my back catalog from a few years ago, it took me a little while to like find the boundaries of telling stories, find my tone, like, the voice. I am my brand, but also my brand kind of has its own little voice and its own little world that is not all of me. And I think everyone who is on social media, every human being in the world right now is having to figure this out. Like, how much of yourself do you give to the world on your social media, which is a very public, forever platform?
Yes.
And it took me a little while to find that. So I would say, like, if you're just starting out, or if you're kind of in that weird, like I don't know, you post something, then you feel shitty about it the next day. Like, it's just like keep track of that and learn and say like, okay, well, that didn't feel quite right. Or when there's something you post and it really feels right and then it resonates with people, like keep track of that and post more of that, and just kind of like move towards the things, like move towards the light. And over time, it gets a little easier to just like, it's kind of like learning a language, but it's like speaking my own language and remembering that this is what I share. So when I share my family specifically, it is usually because it pertains to a project in a way that it makes sense. So I'm not like posting cute pictures of my kids just because they're cute. I have a personal account for doing that. And, you know, for my reasons and for my brand, like I don't want to mom signal too hard. So, I am an entrepreneur. I'm not a stay-at-home mom. And there are things, and you can follow other people and kind of watch how people do it. But I've just been very cautious and conscious of how I like what the boundaries that I draw around it, and like what do I want somebody to feel as they're reading my stuff. So I would say like that's, keep trying and figuring it out until it feels good. Because I think we see in the Art Storefronts group, there's a lot of like friction and like annoyance with having to like constantly post on social media and constantly market. And, it's like this beast that we have to feed. But it only really is that when you're trying to do it in a way that everybody else does it and you're trying to be somebody else. And like until you figure out like, this is what feels good to me, this is what I enjoy doing. Like I really like making reels. It's like making little music videos. I think it's fun. And some people hate it. Like, great. Like it's the same with email. Like there are best practices around doing things, and there are things the way I like to do them. And if it makes me consistent, that's the stuff that I really try to lean into, because otherwise I'm just not going to do it. So I think it's about like learning what works for you and what people resonate with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job at it. And I think, if you want to follow an account that I think has a really nice balance between, it's not just 2D image of the art after 2D image after 2D image. It's Megh holding the art. It's her introducing some of her personal life and some of the things that she does. And it's very well on brand and stitched up. So thanks for that. It's interesting to hear you say it that way. Let's get to the hit. How do you want to tell this story? It's exciting.
Well, yeah, it's so exciting. Well, KU is my alma mater, and they have a really good basketball team. And so they went to the national championship this year and won. And that is not something that happens every year. For somebody who has a license, which I have had for 6 years with the school, it's a huge, huge boon. It's like when your city wins the Super Bowl, everybody benefits. It's like this little microcosm of that, where when your team wins a national championship, everyone like lives in the afterglow of that for years and years and years. So the last time this happened was 14 years ago. So I did not plan that it was going to happen, and I did not prepare anything in advance of it happening. And so they won, and then shortly thereafter, I was like, well, I want to make something to capitalize on this. So the first thing I did was apply for the licensing and get that process going. So most people create, like, you know, when the team gets up there after they win, they have the hat on that already says national champions. Like, there are most smart people who make product that is licensed have something ready to go, and some product already produced in advance. So people are planning for this months in advance. I did not, and maybe I would in the future, just a little bit. I would at least apply for the license. So I could get into like the super nitty gritty of that. I won't, but there's a process. Got that, made something really fast, and just had to like make a fast decision. Pretty much I sat down for 10 minutes and sketched and was like, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to do it. What canvas do I have in the studio that is that size? Sketch it out. And I just started, and I didn't think too hard about what it was. I just went ahead and made like an artistic rendition of the national, like the NCAA championship logo, which is what gets put on like all the t-shirts and stuff. And so yeah, made it, put it out there really quick, teased it a bunch on social media. I had people messaging me saying they were interested in the original before I ever even showed the original. So that was cool and exciting. And so once the licensing came through, I had it all ready to go, and I, spun it up. And so I sold kind of similar to what I've done in the past, where I have 3 tiers. There's the original, there's limited editions, and then there's the open edition. So, high, medium, low. And the limited edition, I did an edition of 100, and they sold out in less than 2 weeks, which is crazy. The last time I did a limited edition, anytime I've done one, it has not gone that fast. So I was very surprised.
What was the price point on that?
Those
open
were
edition
$250.
prints. Open edition prints started limited edition and then original, just because I'm curious.
Yeah. So opens started at 53 for like an 8x8, and then the limited was a 12x12 that was 250. That was hand signed and numbered, and then the original went for 15,000. So
and I'm angry about that.
I know. Well, that was a great learning experience for me, because I had people messaging me even before I really showed out an email and was like, hey fans, I'm going to make something, stay tuned. And then I sent out kind of I'm just waiting on the licensing. And I had probably like 15 or 20 people reach out. And of those, I didn't know everyone, but some of the people I knew were pretty qualified, knew that I sell work at a high price point. And because of that, I did something different than I normally do. And I waited and said, I'm going to auction it, because I have so much interest. I don't want to just set a price and let the first person come and get it. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to bid on it. In my mind, I thought that would sort of build excitement, and that there would be like a lot of stuff, a lot of interest in it. What happened was I should have taken bids right at the moment someone emailed me and said they were interested. I should have taken a bid. Instead, I was like, hold on, I'm working on an auction. Wait, watch your email. And I did it over a weekend, and like not everyone was in town, and the auction was kind of a flop. So that's, in the a flop is all relative, I think, but in my mind, in the way that the excitement that had built, it had kind of petered by the time that happened, and what I had hoped to happen had already passed. So that's like a great learning with, we're talking about like newsjacking and working backwards from demand. And that is, something that I've learned, like the original needed to go up, and it just needed to go at a big price on my website right away, and somebody would have bought it. So I mean, I'm not mad about it. Like, it's great, but
No, yeah.
in the future, trying to be the person who like allows everyone to have an opportunity. You know, it's like the Midwestern in me. It's like, well, everyone should have a chance to bid on this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not going to do that again. So
Yeah.
good,
Call me
lesson.
next time. The price would have been 50 grand, 75 grand on that thing, period.
I know.
End of sentence.
Well, you
But
know
I
what
love,
though? Like, it turned into the heart that's behind your head right now. And
Mhm.
while I will not see the price of this, that heart is getting auctioned next Friday. And the potential for that heart to auction at a very, very high price
Mhm.
is there, and it's probably going to happen. So in a way, that price tag associated with my name is going to happen, just kind of in a different way. So
Did you
it's
donate the
good.
thing behind me?
So I was paid a stipend,
Mhm.
155 of them around town. Everybody got paid the same $2,000 stipend.
Mhm.
And then I had the benefit of getting a crap ton of press from it. So, uh,
Nice.
you know, that stuff is not, uh, you can't necessarily put a price tag on that. Like, those are just good brand building things, especially here. So I take it all.
Yeah. Yeah. In an amazing scenario. And also in terms of pricing, like, you have a very good handle on gotta have the opens, gotta have the limiteds, gotta have the original. And I think, in the future, I think you probably could even spread the price point even a little bit further, right? Like,
Yeah.
two different sets. I mean, I know it gets a little sticky with the licensing and such, but
Yeah.
so nice to have those three options, high, medium, low, everybody's
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah. And I think, you know, especially with this, like just setting it up in a different way than my other stuff, because the licensing rate is much higher for national champion stuff.
Hmm.
And so just like doing the math on it, like I think a lot of people would look at it and be like, whoa, like there's no way you can make money on this. And it's like,
Hmm.
actually, you just have to, you know, do the math and make it work. So I think this is a great, there's a slower burn on national championship stuff than there is on like the death of a celebrity.
Hmm.
So, you know, this, I should be able to ride this all the way through Q4 and see some bumps at Q4 before the next season begins. So,
Yeah, and then year in, year out, and you're able to sell is the terms of the license. You're able to sell the open editions in perpetuity. The limited editions are already all sold out.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, see, that's a
But
really.
I mean, I could do another limited edition if I wanted to, that was a different piece of art. And I actually
Mhm.
had submitted and received, I got another design approved just in case I didn't have time to make an original painting. So I have
Mhm.
something else kind of like approved and ready to rock if I want to put it out to sort of celebrate. Like, there's a night where they hang the banner, the championship banner, and that's like another moment of news. That's like another, like, let's relive the championship. So I could put out something that's like commemorative of that moment. And I might end up doing that in the fall.
Yeah, it's so interesting to contemplate, and it's such a Midwest thing to have like a basement or a man cave or like a game room, and this is just you we talk about conceptually, the themes that we already have, starting with demand, working backwards, and newsjacking. But there's also, start with the end destination, literally, in the sense that, like, what
Mm-hmm.
wall what wall are you designing a particular piece for? And like, one of the things that we've promoted as a business at Art Storefronts is, have a bathroom art cell. Did you do the bathroom art cell, by the way?
I did not, but I did a basement art sale.
You did a basement art cell. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. So the concept of the bathroom art sale is the same thing. It's start with the end and work backwards, in the sense that, like, everyone has a bathroom. Everyone could serve to tune up their art in their bathroom, right? And do a little bit fresher. And so it gives you this opportunity to sell smaller pieces because bathrooms are tiny, potentially series because people like putting series in. You design for the man cave. This is starting with the man cave and working backwards. This is starting with the sports room, the basement, and working backwards. And if you're a huge diehard fan of this team, why the hell would you not want to have that in there? I mean, to commemorate it, it's a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, definitely. Especially choosing a size. You know, a lot of people hem and haw over the size of a limited edition and like to do
Mhm.
multiple sizes and stuff. And over time, just like, frankly, from just like a keeping track of stuff and making sure I
Mhm.
don't screw it up, I've
Yeah.
gone down to just like one size, one version. And
Mm-hmm.
then one of the things I do on them, which is especially with this one was really neat, is that I allow people to personalize it. So I write, it gets numbered, but then I'll also write like, we were there at the game, section 5. And then when they have that,
Sick.
it's hand signed and numbered by me, but then it also has this like, there were a lot of like inside jokes and special memories of like, I was like, I don't know what this means, but
You just
writing
wrote it on the back.
on the, yeah, yeah. And like for arts, like add a little box to say like, write in your personalization. And if I'm already there keeping track of like what person is this, what number is this, it takes an extra 10 seconds and people really, really like that. And I like doing that. It makes the process really fun for me. So I'm not just like, sign over, sign number. I get to like have a little personal moment with each person's piece and then reference it. Like I'll write a little thank you note, be like, hope Betty loves the gift. And I feel like those little, where there are opportunities to do that, it means a lot. And people don't forget that.
Yeah. I'm just like thinking through in my mind, like one of the enjoyable things about being in this business for as long as we have now is, you get to have what all you read in the books, right? About who sold well and selling techniques and pricing techniques and how to contemplate that and psychological triggers and all the rest of that nonsense. It's not nonsense, it's good stuff. But then, we get customers that have a great deal of success like you, and then we get to think through like, okay, how would I reverse engineer that? How would I make that situation better in the future? And I love the rule of threes between the low, medium, and high. I think if I could have advised you ahead of time, I would have said do a low, medium, and high within the limited editions, because those
Yeah.
sold out so insanely quickly.
Yeah.
And you could have played with size in there. You could have played with media type, and you could have started the limited editions at like 1,000, and then had some $5,000 ones, and then had some $25,000 ones, and then that would have stepped you into the original. And I'm like really cognizant of just this is embarrassing, but I used to own a furniture store. Okay, many moons ago, I owned a furniture store, and I've said
I
this.
feel like you've told me this
Yeah,
before.
I've said this on a podcast before, so somebody would maybe hear the story, but I think the analogy works so insanely well. Like this was like a franchise thing that I bought into. I was young and dumb, and they had a very, very intelligent way to sell the product line. And you would advertise in the penny saver this terrible, crappy mattress that they told you to run it over with a car. It was so bad. Okay. And it like cost you $100, but you advertised like a pillow top for $49, and you ran it over and you left it in the plastic on the ground. And the people would walk in, okay, and you would have like the most expensive, gigantic memory foam that pillow top thing on the end, and then the beds would just go all the way down in quality down to the crappy one on the end, right? But you had this huge range, and so you had your advertising technique, which I'll admit was a little duplicitous, to bring people in, and they would anchor on that lower price, and they would be like, okay, I know what that amount of money gets me, right? And then they would go inevitably all the way up to the really, really expensive one, and they lay on that, and when they see that one, and they would anchor in their mind on that price, and then they would usually fall somewhere in the middle, right? One of the middle beds every single solitary time. But going through that business for like a year, I think I had it for like a year and a half or whatever. Sometimes people would just walk right in and buy the expensive one, and then sometimes people would actually take the cheap one, and then I'd have to take another one and put it in plastic and run it over again, which is really annoying. But when you have the range, everybody kind of one, it establishes the value of the one on the top end, and then two, everybody sort of self-selects, and you really do have something for everyone. And so it's like the Russian doll thing. Like you had the 3 price points, but you could have gone into limited editions on the 3, and then if you would have done the limited editions on the 3, it would have taken away any of that anguish or doubt you had. And how do I price the original? Because some of the limited editions could have been 25,000. I mean, it could have been limited edition of 4, hand signed by Megh, giant thing, including a program, like So anyway, first of all, first world problems here, Megh. You killed this thing.
Totally. I know. I'm like, it went pretty well, Patrick.
Yeah. Shut up.
But you know what though? It's like it is like the power of being able to pre-plan and think about things even just like a few weeks in advance rather than like going with my pants on fire. And I think doing work like this and newsjacking within a little bit more specific parameters, then like a lot of the work is done already, rather than like choosing a completely new island every time and kind of like restarting from scratch and like choosing what accounts to post it to, and you know, all that stuff that you have to figure out like in the heat of a moment. It's helpful to have like as much done as possible in advance, and that is definitely a lesson that I've learned along the way. It's like how much of this can be done and automated and like ready to roll, so that I think some of that like panic creating, panic putting it out there, trying to capitalize, like that also people can smell that in the same way that they can smell when something is not authentic. So yeah, but I mean, that's like it's a learning process. We're all just kind of figuring this out as we go.
100%. I mean, us too, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, and that's why I love talking about it after the fact, because
yeah,
it's very easy to get bogged down in the emotion of things, especially when it comes to pricing. But it's just simple math. It's just simple math. It's a mathematical equation of ones and zeros, and there should be no emotion in it. Way easier said than done. But I like designing the things. Well, you've been awesome with the time. I totally appreciate you. I totally appreciate you sharing the story. I want to leave with, well, first of all, do you have anything you want to promote?
Well, if you're in Kansas City, I've got this Parade of Hearts thing going on.
Awesome.
There'll be a lot of like info coming out next week around the auction of that piece and how much it sells for and all that. So that's kind of what's hot on my list right now. The other thing that I wish I could talk about, I can't announce quite yet, but it's pretty exciting. So,
I love the tease. Soon. I love it. I told you, natural born marketer right there.
I know.
It bums me out that you're not going to know what this thing sells for, by the way. I would love to know.
No, I will know. I'll be there, and I will be there in person while
so
it's
you
happening.
Will know.
Yeah, no, I'll be there taking a video. Like there'll be, I just will not receive any of the proceeds. They're all going to local organizations, and it's a really great fundraiser, good cause. But
awesome.
It's exciting to see what happens. So
for sure, and it's, you know, it's still the canon of Megh's work and what it's selling for. Okay, so to follow all that, the best place to keep up with Megh and everything she's doing is at Megh Makes Art, MEGH Makes Art at handle on Instagram. Everything else is there. If you're an artist, don't get on her email list though, because then she's just gonna have to pay, and you guys are, unless you really are interested in your work. I feel like I constantly have to like worry about like flooding your email list with a bunch of artists that just want to like, what do you know about art storefronts? Is it good? Do you like the platform? Are you happy with it? I don't want to do it. But before you vamoose, I am a first year, second year, third year artist, just getting going, starting on my marketing, learning it all, trying to balance that with probably a day job or other commitments or everything else, banging my head against the wall sometimes. How do I keep going? Superstar Megh, what is your advice for that particular avatar?
Oh yeah. Get very, very clear on what you want, and then work towards that. I think a lot of times artists are trying to fulfill something that is somebody else's dream, and like what do you actually want to do with your art, and then go from there.
Boom. Love it. Megh, thank you. Appreciate you. Stay tuned to Megh's thing, where we'll to Megh's Instagram, where we will get updates on how this whole thing goes down. And just as a final, so I write it down, when is the auction? Because now I'm interested.
Yeah, it's on next Friday. So a week from today on the 17th.
Boom. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations. I appreciate you.
Thanks
for taking the time. Thanks everybody for listening.
You got it.
Till next time.